you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
Well, that's outdated. Hi diddly ho there, gamers. Can you believe it? I actually came back to life from dead YouTuber land just to do a follow-up on this video, cause it turns out it's not just the cult following that remembers Battle for Bikini Bottom, but THQ Nordic as well. Cause literally a few weeks after I made this video, they announced a global revival of several game titles connected with Nickelodeon properties, most notably SpongeBob titles.
Hi, how are you?
Fast forward to June 5th, 2019, and we get our first look at SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, a remaster of the original developed by Purple Lamp Studios to preserve the game for a new generation, and to give people plenty of ammo for snarky comments on my original video. Yeah, I see you guys, you're not that clever. Now, this was definitely a surprise for me at the time, since I was convinced the title was going to stay a cult classic, since old licensed TV show video games don't seem very high on the remaster priority list. However, my video got over 2 million views, which I was not expecting, but also thank you very much. Love that energy, y'all. But I don't know if THQ Nordic actually took notice of this, or it was a massive coincidence timing-wise. But was my video responsible for pushing the company to revitalize their old Nickelodeon classics? Probably not. But am I gonna take some credit for it anyway? A little bit, yeah. I mean, just add this to the pile of games I've covered that get ported or remastered not too long after. Getting weirdly prophetic at this point, what's up with that? Subscribe for more obscure video game predictions, I guess. I don't know, I could be right. But seriously, this game coming back was definitely a collective effort, since there has always been a noticeable enthusiasm from older fans, along with an incredibly passionate and dedicated speedrunning community that has kept the love alive long enough to justify bringing this game back. So here it is, 17 years later in all of its spongy glory. Now, I'm definitely a little late to the reviewer party, of course. Slow and steady wins the race after all. Or at least that's what I tell myself.
And the winner is Rocky!
But regardless of the time pass, it's not gonna stop me from yelling about this game, cause I'm willing to tackle the real issues and debates that totally affect the material problems of people's lives. So anyway, let's dive into this critical analysis of a cartoon game with some good old compare and contrast, quips, qualms, praises, and discussing the true level of enjoyment with or without the nostalgia factor. Let's go! Of course, we're diving in with the obvious question first. Is SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated good? Thank you, Gary. But yeah, as an avid fan of the original game, I can say that I was very content with my overall Rehydrated experience, and I highly recommend it to anyone who enjoyed the original. However, it did not entirely blow me into the water.
What?
While this is a very faithful remaster with welcome small additions and improvements, it does miss the mark in the subtle details department, along with struggling to recapture all of the original's charm. To be short, it doesn't go the extra mile to modernize the game that does feel a bit dated in certain areas. But isn't that the whole point of a remaster? Or a remake, technically, or a remodeling, I guess, if you think about it, or reinvention? Okay, you know what? Terminology seems to be a confusing maze here when it comes to describing just what kind of experience you're actually gonna get. Cause now that the gaming industry has officially been in the rehashed nostalgic game phase for a hot minute now, the general terms remaster and remake are as ambiguous as SpongeBob and Patrick's relationship.
F is for friends who fall in love. U is for you're the only one. N is for never let me go. Let me go. SpongeBob, you're getting me flustered. I wanna be your patty, can you smother me in mustard? If
Like, what the f is going on here? Anyway, there used to be a hard, obvious line between these two in the earlier days, where remaster meant it's the original game with improved graphics like sharper resolutions and frame rates, with a handful of mechanical fixes, and remakes were the original game rebuilt from the ground up to offer a familiar but ultimately new experience with much more creative liberties. We've had a lot of these over the years now, some with fantastic new ideas, additions, and outcomes, along with some not-so-good ones. But recently, there is a huge gray area where the terms are constantly interchangeable in conversation. Some titles are technically remasters, but with massive changes to the point it feels like a totally different game, and then remakes that rebuild the whole game from the ground up just for it to be the same exact experience, but with so much glitz and glamour it would have caused the old hardware to explode after rendering one rock. The point is, umbrella terms like this are surface level at best, and I swear to God, if you guys fight about them in the comments section, I will implode from embarrassment, because at the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter. It's always going to be recycled content in some way, shape, or form with a new type of big or small flair. It's really the details and the scope of the project that let you know what to expect. But I do gotta give props to the naming department, cause Rehydrated is a perfectly decent way to describe this game. It's short, different enough from the original title, thematic, and accurate, cause they just drowned the game in a new saturation hue. Cause the most noticeable difference between Rehydrated and the OG is that popping colors. The new paint job is kind of pulling double duty as a facelift to keep up with modern graphic standards and a way to match the new colors and aesthetics of the more recent SpongeBob seasons in all of its uncomfortably twee and uncanny gross-out humor imagery. This cannot be good for kids' psyches, oh my. But besides the new look, this plays almost identically to the 2003 original game, with a handful of changes. So just know that you're getting a basic, straightforward collectathon platformer from the PS2 era, with a goofy story and fun level variety and gameplay to make it memorable. It's not huge, it wasn't ever groundbreaking, but gosh darn it, it's still considered the best SpongeBob game. That is until the Cosmic Shake comes out. Hopefully. Fingers crossed, everybody. It got the most fanfare back in the day because of the show-accurate levels and story, the classic platforming and different characters to play as, topped off with kinda terrifying but cool boss fights. Not to mention, it was the game that allowed you to casually explore most of Bikini Bottom, so you could absorb it all in and roleplay. And all of that is still here. Now, naturally, when you have a game with flexible mechanics and open level progression, a speedrunning community will flock to it, and flock they did. Because Battle for Bikini Bottom shared qualities with games like Jak and Daxter, Psychonauts, Spyro, Mario, etc. So it aged as well as any other collecting platformer classic in a lot of folks' eyes, with just a more corporate-y, licensed TV show kind of twist. So I may have been wrong to allude that THQ Nordic would never bring it back, but I was totally right when I said this game gets no respect from the mainstream. History does indeed repeat itself, y'all, and it's time to get a little petty on main, because Rehydrated had a wide range of review scores at launch, some having very tame and obvious criticisms, while others dishing out more grounded and positive opinions. But the mainstream reviews were honestly some of the worst I have ever seen. Like for any game ever. And I normally don't get all up in arms about what others have to say about something that I can form my own opinion on, and I'm really not out here to start fights with folks just doing their job on a deadline. Obviously, I don't know what that's like, but these were particularly, uniquely very bad, and the dislike ratio in comments seem to agree. Not gonna spend all day on this, but just a few highlights to break it down as to why I have problems with these. Again, I am petty, so here we go.
The only problem is that during SpongeBob's wind-up animation for bowling, he walks forward. That means you fall off of the button, which closes the gate and prevents you from bowling the bubble where you intended, when you intended. These kinds of gameplay barricades are common and force you to restart and face your demons again and again and again.
What is this? SpongeBob is the Dark Souls of cartoon games now? Who are the demons? Are they in the room with us right now? But for reals, you spend a minute explaining how tough and irritating the game is, and then immediately contradict yourself in the next sentence, claiming it's
rarely amusing or challenging.
Busted!
After the first few areas, exploring quickly becomes a chore. Some spatulas are thrown at you for doing nothing, and others feel impossible to get due to bad camera angles and unexplained systems that you're somehow expected to know.
Did you try reading the signs that explain the systems that are apparently not explained? Did you? Like I could barely read as a kid and I still managed, honey.
Sometimes there are robots placed right at the end of those sequences that are too large for your character to move around properly because of their lack of mobility. It just feels cruel.
Okay, homie was willing to give some credit where credit is due in this, but really couldn't pick if the game was a boring, bland platformer for dumb babies, or it's so complex and punishing, a prison escape sounds easier.
No way! There goes our deposit on these costumes.
Ultimately, it just sounds like they're outing themselves as not a very good player. 'Tis not my own skill that is the issue. No. Clearly, the game is poorly designed despite being beatable for children.
There were multiple points in the game where I climbed up to the top of a high structure and a rogue robot knocked me all the way down into the water. Ironically, none of the protagonists can swim.
Okay, Bucka, that's literally a thing in the show. Are you Alrighty, for their sake, I'm gonna assume that one was a really bad joke, but they also might not be an avid SpongeBob enjoyer. Understandable, I am not the biggest fan of the newer seasons myself, but guys, to point out the obvious, just for future references, normally people who enjoy TV and movie video games are folks who also enjoy said TV show and movie. So, just to be clear, SpongeBob fans are probably more likely to appreciate this game than non-SpongeBob fans. Okay, crazy high-level ideas here, I know. We are big braining today. Try to keep up.
If you find you still have fond feelings about the original SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, you should watch a speedrun of it or find your old copy and dust off that PS2. This one isn't it. It's a game so focused on emulating and embellishing the original that it doesn't know the parts of itself that are fun and the parts that aren't.
Oh my god, you know, I don't even know what these people really want. So this game indulges too much in the original, so go play the original instead? Like, are you even listening to yourself? For a split second! Okay, so GameSpot was easily the worst. Like, a 2 seriously makes the game sound like it's unplayable. But IGN wasn't much better.
Aside from some great returning lines from supporting characters that still made me chuckle, it's absolutely jarring when one of the original actors doesn't voice their own iconic character, like Mr. Krabs. Clancy Brown was absent in the original and is still not voicing that role in Rehydrated.
Do you think I've got bilge water on the brain?
Okay, but consider this. Smoky Lung Krabs was iconic in the original, and I'm glad he's back. He's an essential part of this game, because it's funny as hell.
This f***ing robot crisis is making the Krusty Krab lose like a sinking sh**.
I like to imagine it's a reference to the Krabs on Ketamine universe now, so fight me on this, you soulless killjoys.
The difficulty jump in levels like SpongeBob's Dream is often fun, but there's such whiplash from the rest of the adventure. And when they're done, the challenge reverts to being simplistic and kid-friendly for its final few challenges.
Are you ready, kids?
Yeah, I would also say this game could be enjoyed by kids. Unlike those other, totally not kid-friendly, for mature tax-paying adults-only platformers. You know, all of those. Now, I'm definitely preaching to the choir here because the comments saw right through this crap. Got some real zingers in here. Great job, y'all. You random strangers online made them pay for their reviewer crimes by totally roasting and humiliating them. What a victory in the battle of ideals. We did it! Of course, IGN and GameSpot aren't exactly famous for their nuanced, fair, informative reviews, and I'm not the first to point out the ridiculousness of applying an objective number score as the end-all say-all to a subjective medium. But some critics tend to lack some perspective, basic mechanical skills, and brain cells.
That means you fall off of the button, which closes the gate and prevents you from bowling the bubble where you intended.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Like seriously, you get paid for this, homie. What went wrong here? Just back up! Oh my god, just back up! Some folks just don't get it, and they probably never will. It doesn't make them bad people or anything, and it's no major chips off my, shoulder, I guess. I will still sleep soundly at night knowing some folks just don't like the same games as me. But reskin this title with any classic game mascot, and suddenly it's charming, it's fun, the gameplay is satisfying, etc. To me, it seems the source of the mainstream's issues and gripes are because it's SpongeBob. It's a family-friendly game meant to capture the feels of a relatively childish TV show with more merchandise than God, and some folks don't respect and take interest in content they think is beneath their age range now. Like, come on. The bias is written on the walls with these videos. The unnecessary dissing, the condescending attitude, the lack of a basic introduction to the game and immediately jumping into complaining about controls that make you look incompetent. Very telling, y'all. But let's be real. A few
Barnacle heads!
opinions are whatever in the grand scheme of things. The world keeps spinning and gradually heating up into irreversible chaos. But people love this game regardless, and I like taking cheap shots sometimes to feel something. The real point is, though, is that I'm glad Rehydrated exists, and I want to dive into the nitty-gritty details and chat about it from my unbiased, 1000% correct and objective personal opinion. 'Cause we can! So for those who live under a rock, the game's story is fairly simple. It starts off with Plankton creating a robot army to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, but things quickly spiral out of control because Plankton accidentally flipped on the don't obey switch. Oops-a-daisy, what a way to cause some crazy shenanigans. Meanwhile, SpongeBob and Patrick are playing cowboys and robots, as best friends do, but the two of them wish to play with real robots, so they do a voodoo satanic ritual, go to sleep, and the next day, Plankton's robots have completely taken over and trash Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob believes himself to be responsible because black magic, so he sets off to stop the robots in different parts of the town. And eventually, by overcoming waves of enemies, obstacles, old people, tongue friction, museum security, haunted shipyards, and dream psychedelics, SpongeBob defeats the big mega cursed robots, crashes a marriage in the process, and saves the day. The plot is about as complicated and enjoyable as an average SpongeBob episode, but it's just stretched out by 10 hours. You got your dumb jokes, slapstick, character quips, goofy antics, and an abundance of show references and locations. While the character text conversations can be a bit stiff,
All right, stand back. Oh boy. There!
the charm is consistent to the very end, and even though this ain't the apex of gaming storytelling by any means, the plot serves its purpose and allows for plenty of bonding time with all of Bikini Bottom. The whole concept is just a vehicle and excuse to have you sightsee every major location of the show, so it's SpongeBob enjoyers tested and approved. Not really sure what else I can say beyond that, because it's not like there is noticeable character growth or major consequences to analyze here, unless we dive into the depths of Squidward's deprived, jaded soul. Do you ever wonder if Squidward's contempt of SpongeBob's free, childlike spirit is only a front for his deep-seated envy of SpongeBob's authentic artistic expression, and therefore the source of all of his anguish? Who knows? But the game's plot is a perfectly decent little tale to give you enemies to take out and places to explore. So let's move on to that. So, as stated before, Battle for Bikini Bottom is a semi-open world collectathon platformer. Basically, in order to progress to other levels, you need to collect golden spatulas by either exploring or completing objectives, such as giving yourself a super wedgie, doing some amusement park robot cleanup, finding lost campers, eating sand, gathering laundry, and getting that money. Your main hub, of course, are the streets of Bikini Bottom, letting you pick your levels of choice, rather it be Goo Lagoon Shores, the Mermalayer's disco floors, or Sandy's Texas Heat Dome. Oh yeah, if there is one thing this game deserves massive praise on, it's the attention to detail. Not just aesthetically, but for the way the levels incorporate the ideas and gags from the show. Jellyfish Fields, for example, has a toll to repair a bridge early on, and once you pay it, the bridge doesn't simply raise from the water or something. No, an airplane suddenly flies overhead and cargo drops the planks down in place, a direct reference to the Stranded Camping episode. A classic! This is a tiny detail, yes, but the game is littered with moments like this, accumulating the charm in every corner. Like the show reference wiki list is massive. Look around long enough and you'll notice these very weird but hilarious background details that prevent the levels from feeling dull, which is arguably the worst thing a platformer can be. As for the design itself, though, the game leans on the simpler side of having a lot of freedom, but ultimately the way forward is incredibly obvious. This makes the spatula gathering rather easy, since you'll nab up most of them by progressing through the level casually, with the rest of the objectives being simple puzzles, timed missions and combat challenges, with the occasional wacky reward. Now, while each level introduces new obstacles, most things are going to be handled by jumping, sliding, swinging, throwing, or hitting. But the general freedom and the simplicity of the levels is definitely what adds to this game's replayability, similar to how people get so much mileage out of Mario 64 still. Definitely not as dense of a game, that's for sure, but Battle for Bikini Bottom is a very generous collectathon, and with the option to warp to any discovered spatula's location via the menu, which got a bang a new visual upgrade I might add, bling bling baby, so it ends up being a very easy game to beat, which I honestly like a lot. Truth be told, I am not the biggest fan of collectathons as a genre. This is totally personal, by the way, because I'm just not very interested in frantically looking for items locked behind a wall of tedium. It makes me anxious. Obviously, there's a lot of fun to be had, I'm not doubting their appeal, but the second I hit an annoying roadblock, I give up. Call me weak-willed if you want, because that's exactly what I am. But Battle for Bikini Bottom doesn't have this problem, because it's very easy to collect what you need to beat it, while still having enough challenging objectives for completionists. And for a game that's meant to be enjoyed by 7 to 35-year-olds, I can forgive a game for being a little bit too easy. So no, Pro Gamer Analyzer Extreme naysayers out there, we do not need every game to be a difficult test of will for the younglings. Letting them enjoy something simple will not lead to the fake gamer Armageddon doomed to collapse society, cause it's actually gonna be brought on by NFT bros using farming bots in blockchain bimbos magical mining adventures. Coming soon. This is a relaxing game that is totally fine with being a Bikini Bottom sightseeing experience. But of course, the famous phrase, this game is not flawless, and it's incredibly obvious. I can definitely say some levels are more fun than others, and those others sometimes punch you right in the blowhole. Ouch! But the fun ones are paced out well enough that the entertainment stays consistent to the very end. However, that's not gonna stop me from rating the levels, cause I want this on the record. By the way, the boss stages are getting their own little list later. But starting from best to worst, we got Sand Mountain. SuperButterBuns' first pick here because boy howdy, I just absolutely love the sliding in this game. And that's all Sand Mountain is. All sliding, all the time.
Life's as extreme as you wanna make it! Ow!
It's a very rinse and repeat level with relatively similar courses, but they all got their silly touches and they're challenging enough, especially when timed. I don't know, perhaps I find this super fun because you can blow up stuff and get tons of shinies along the way, or maybe there is something oddly satisfying about SpongeBob's massive tongue. Like, that thing is moist. Okay, moving on. Second best goes to the iconic SpongeBob's Dream. A lot of folks really love this level, and I'm no different. It gets major points for the sheer variety and creativity, and the massive characters staring at you in the sky. You'll never feel alone.
Have you been lonely out there all alone?
Easily one of the most noticeable difference between this and the original is the skybox. Things got a whole makeover. Long gone is the terrifying repeating yellow pattern dome, and hello clear skies! Look, a cloud! This is arguably one of the more difficult levels though, because there is lots of killer platforming and aggressive robots, along with Squidward's big nose musical obstacle course, Mr. Krabs' money murder pit, and just Texas. That's what it looks like, right? You really gotta stay focused during these because there's very little room for error, but it's all worth it because you're rewarded with doing absolutely nothing at the end.
You did it!
Thank you, Patrick. Never really understood how you could get material spatulas in a dream world, but what can I say? Each area is just incredibly fitting for the whole cast, so it gets big love from me. Now, third place goes to
Goo Lagoon.
a simple level, a classic level, a sandy level. I've always had a thing for beaches since one of my longtime fantasies is being marooned on a tropical island, so this place has got a lot going for it. Like the muscle. But if you enjoy little button laser puzzles, or popping kids' balloons so they fall to their death, or climbing a flooding sand mansion, then Goo Lagoon is for you. Not to mention the carnival that's loaded with safety hazards. This has always felt like the most balanced level to me. Nothing too frustrating, you don't stay in the same area for too long, and it's really rewarding to finish the laser puzzle by heat blasting that robot and popping it like an ant under a magnifying glass. cathartic. Alrighty, 4th place goes to the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, the spookiest, rawest, and stinkiest looking level.
It's disgusting.
The vibes are the real selling point of this one, with stuff like tombstones, ship parts, green goop galore, and some really sick, creepy background tunes. However, it also feels like one of the more smaller and linear levels, with average platforming and excessive amount of wall jumping sections, with one in particular just being flat out mean. But the level concludes in a big boat robot battle of destruction and Sandy kicking the crap out of the Flying Dutchman. I believe this is what the kids call a girl boss gaslight moment. Or something. So considering this is basically the final area before the final boss of the game, it's nice that things end on a semi-high note. Moving on though, we have now hit the just alright club, cause Jellyfish Fields is just alright. It's essentially the real tutorial stage that doesn't feel like a tutorial. I appreciate how open and fieldy this level is though, because it gives you space to learn the controls, and it casually introduces all of the obstacles and mechanical basics. I also just get a kick out of watching Squidward get fried alive.
Too bad that didn't kill me.
The Jellyfish King is a cute boss as well. I want good things for him. It's what he deserves. It's easily the most fitting starting level because it's just the place the boys like to hang out and have fun in the show. And you know what? Sometimes I just want to hang out and have some dumb fun too. And another one on the just alright list is Downtown Bikini Bottom. This level gets points for actually feeling like a large city with 3 major areas to explore. There's the main city, the Sea Needle, and the rooftops, which all look like they have been totally devastated by the robots, especially with all the hot sauce laying around. What's up with that? The tall rooftops give you plenty of time and room to get used to Sandy's mechanics, and all of the tasks are manageable, even if I have to stare at SpongeBob's ass crack for a little too long. Overall though, this level's only crime is really just being more boring compared to the others, and the steering wheel collecting does not help. Why is it 11? Was an even 10 just not passing the vibe check at the office that day? I don't know, I'm peeved for some reason. But now, we are easing into the levels that I dread the most. Starting with the Merma layer. Okay, it's honestly not that bad. I'm just not a big fan of conveyor belts and watermelon tossing over an endless cavern to fix a TV. The size and obscurity of the level is fun though, and you got a lot to see, but it also has one of the most difficult spatulas to get if you have no patience. Yeah, that one. It's where the demons dwell. Despite that, though, this level has one of the better mini-bosses with Prawn and his electric tuba. It's a neat little subplot with a neat little shrimp, and it adds some more humor between the old bags.
He put all of Mermaid Man's white clothes in the washer with a red sock.
Everything I own turned pink. Pink!
But also, where the f*** is Merman's tongue?
Flappin' Flotsam, what's that?
Good God, it looks like one of those gummy Krabby Patty things or something. Like, where did it go? And almost at the bottom of my list is Rock Bottom. Pun definitely intended. This level's got some funny bright spots like the Museum of Forbidden Insight, but for the most part, it feels like a confusing mess. Midway through, I always get turned around or fall a few platforms, and suddenly, I don't know which way is forward despite there being arrows. I feel like these things lie, and they keep looping me around, and by some trial and error miracle, I find my way to the end. It doesn't help that this is also loaded with pissed-off narcoleptic robots. Personally, I think it would have been better if they just added half of the area into another loading zone, just so all of these puzzles and platforms are not overlapping on each other. Visually, all of this bottom architecture is awesome, but the layout just ain't passing any vibe checks with me. No siree. But coming in triple fart minus place is the Kelp Forest. You win my absolute disdain. This really does feel like the most afterthought level, like they didn't have enough time to double check and test how obnoxious certain objectives would be, like the Patrick Stoneface puzzle. Yikes. I'm pretty sure I've never completed this thing legitimately. Like, am I doing this right? It feels wrong, like a gameplay wedgie, and oh my god, it has a looping camera glitch where if you jump on a certain leaf, it just keeps going and going and going, and I feel trapped in this vegan hell! But that's not even the worst of it, because the crystal collecting stage makes me nauseous. The most whack and boring back and forth kind of platforming puzzle. I loathe. I feel like this area would have been better if they ended it with a boss or something, like taking on a robot imposter magic conch. That could have been cool.
You mean like this?
I have ideas, but nah, we are blood diamond diggers now, I guess. The aesthetics are on point, as usual. I've always been a slut for the wilderness, but this place just feels way too claustrophobic in a drunk way. Also, the sliding section here sucks. It's narrow, boring, a little confusing, and I do not care for these awkward, sharp turns. How the old man set the time record for this, I do not know. The aerodynamic curves must be flawless or something. So that's how I rank all of the main levels, but shout out to the micro levels that you can visit, like the Krusty Krab and Squidward's house. Absolutely love that you can get a golden spatula from trashing his place. That was easily the most satisfying thing to do as a 9-year-old, and I have not developed mentally since. It's still hilarious. But let's switch gears to how this bad boy Sponge and friends actually plays. So, as mentioned before, SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom leans hard on the basic platformer gameplay essentials. Most obstacles revolve around jumping and hitting, but more specific objectives require special moves or certain characters. In SpongeBob's case, being a fellow froth enthusiast, he can use bubble powers to crush his enemies and puzzles, starting with the Bubble Bash, an upward smashing attack in Leaf Erikson fashion, then the Bubble Bounce for the feet lovers, and eventually acquiring the omnidirectional Bubble Bowl, a thing that is very difficult to use for some people apparently. And the last being the Cruise Bubble, which is just a straight-up torpedo. And for the occasional sneaking sections, SpongeBob can tiptoe on demand for surprise attacks. And Rehydrated changed how you use this from analog pressure to a dedicated button for accuracy. And God bless, because now I actually feel like I can use this properly instead of just jumping over the floating metal platforms in rock bottom. Like, did anyone know you could just tiptoe over those things? I sure didn't, because I couldn't read. Funny how that works. The button's nice. Some of SpongeBob's moves are gradually unlocked as you progress through the boss levels, but despite having the most abilities, the game will often require you to switch to either Patrick or Sandy at the bus stops. Big, pink, and
Stupid!
Here's big defining feature is chucking large objects to get the job done, whether it be tiki heads, the robots themselves, or an endless supply of mega GMO watermelons laying around. Fruity! Now, when areas require more mobility, there's Sandy, using her lasso to grapple swing on the floating Texas symbols just hanging around for some reason, along with her ability to literally fly. Or glide, I guess. Well, I don't know, technically it's tread water, if you really think about it. Controlled drowning, actually, you know. The point is, she's OP as and doesn't play by our petty physics rules, and she's high-key my favorite character in the game for this reason, although it's not much of a contest. Regardless, though, everyone controls rather well. The general snappiness, and dare I say, stretchiness of the movement, matched with the multi-purpose use of everyone's abilities, makes room for varied solutions for puzzles and combat, but with the limited amount of moves each character has, it's never overwhelming when looking for a solution. Also, the bus stops throughout the areas that switch the characters give some strong visual aid that it's time to use someone else, if the Texas symbols and watermelons weren't enough for you. Now, occasionally, the collision can mess up, causing you to miss a target or slip off something, which can definitely be frustrating. The movement and abilities are not as accurate as they could be, and when taking damage, you'll often fly back in shock and terror, which can sometimes throw you off a cliff or something. So, while the gameplay is simple, you'll sometimes encounter a cheesy, stupid feeling death or setback, and spatial awareness will not save you. On top of that, the game still can't seem to make up its mind on what is and isn't an insta-kill death do-over. Like most platformers, Battle for Bikini Bottom is loaded with gaps and floors you're not supposed to fall into. While instantly dying from a bottomless cavern totally makes sense, the liquids always seem really flimsy. Sometimes touching it just throws the character back where they were with no damage taken, and then other times, it just straight up kills you. My guess is that it's only an insta-death if you jump too far to be thrown back into position, but I honestly couldn't tell you where that cutoff is. Inconsistency is the word of the day. But weird deaths aren't much of an issue though, since there are checkpoints everywhere, almost to a comical degree. But it's still a little annoying when you're not certain if touching the fluids will give you a little slap on the wrist or a trip to sea heaven.
Help! Help!
Now, the differences in the gameplay from the original are very apparent. Can't name them all, but the biggest positive one for me is the feature that lets you see incoming enemy projectiles with little ring red indicators, along with seeing exactly where you're throwing your crap every time instead of relying on the big obnoxious fingers from before. Long gone are the days of frantically throwing fruit to God knows where and being surprise blasted by tartar sauce. This is good and nice and helpful and a baby change, but very much welcomed. Another difference is that Sandy's swing animation feels way more forceful and fast to the point of it being a bit too snappy. Like, girl, where are you packing all of this inertia? Ain't nothing slowing this furball down. This isn't really a complaint as it is an observation, since swinging feels better, if not a little more chaotic. But what is a complaint is the increased speed of SpongeBob's wall slap climbing. This move is only required a handful of times, but using it becomes exceptionally annoying in the graveyard when trying to scale the slap contraption from hell. This thing demands extreme accuracy, and while it's doable, the increased speed makes your movements way more rigid and difficult to control. So I struggled here. Big time, considerably more than the original. And that really encapsulates my feelings towards Rehydrated in general. While it adds little features that improve the experience, it also tweaks things that mess up what was already working, whether it be in design, gameplay, or graphics. Never to a game-breaking level, of course, but just enough to be like, huh, that don't feel right. These tiny annoyances can add up, yeah, but like I already said, what made the original fun is still totally intact. Personally, one of my favorite aspects of the game are the little enemy introductions. They are nothing new in gaming, of course, but taking a brief moment to acknowledge a new enemy type while demonstrating what their attacks look like lets you know what to expect. Except when you come across the enemy before you get the introduction, like the big tire bubble robots you fight in SpongeBob's Dream. For some reason, you don't see their intro until you reach the graveyard, which 99% of players will see after SpongeBob's Dream. Yeah, that can be a little weird and pointless. Regardless though, they are funny and informative, and any game that does enemy intros well gets a huge bun seal of approval from me. I want to see them. I also really appreciate the health system, the underwear metric. Brilliant, genius, hilarious. The self-awareness is immaculate.
Ew. Can't believe I'm wearing SpongeBob's underwear.
There are opportunities to regain health everywhere, and expanding your layered undies set only requires a curious mind attracted to shiny things. It's nice, but easily the highlight of the whole game are the big robot boss fights.
A huge murderous robot shaped like a squirrel.
Ranking-wise, they just get better as you go. Ta-da! Easy. Mechanically, they all boil down to dodging their waves of telegraphed attacks and waiting for the very clear window of opportunity to retaliate. They have multiple phases, which gradually ramp up in difficulty and occasionally switch up the characters so they keep you on your toes, or lack thereof. But their biggest appeal is the pure, funny spectacle of it all. Every fight is commentated on by the Fishhead TV host, which is just so charming and helpful to boot. Robot Sandy is fought in the big boxing arena with
Bling! The old clothesline move!
Robot Patrick is weirdly metal as hell, being in a creepy industrial park featuring an acidic ice cream cone that I really want to lick. And the last boss being Robot SpongeBob at the Chum Bucket, which is honestly terrifying with those uncanny dead eyes. But dodging his attacks are super fun. There is a noticeable rhythm to the whole fight. But after his defeat, the game goes full inflation mode, and the game truly finishes off with a final platforming fighting section inside Robot SpongeBob's massive head to take out Robot Plankton, the actual antagonist and Robot SpongeBob's lover.
You don'ts are destroying my beautiful bride. We were supposed to get married next week.
Did he say married?
Yeah, this game was definitely ahead of its time. IGN, GameSpot, homophobic. This section has a lot of combat hoopla with multiple objectives that require you to utilize all of the skills you've learned, but the sheer scale of it is nuts. Like, this does not add up measurement-wise. How is this fitting inside of a robot inside of a building? Who knows? It's absolutely massive, and it does not make sense. But God, it's cool. Enemy rushes can be a real snooze sometimes, but the final section doesn't overstay its welcome, and it's a change from the normal boss formula, which offers a challenge that feels satisfying enough to beat. And once you're done, and you just watch SpongeBob roll around for a little bit in the credits. Well, I mean, you always have the option to continue playing for the 100% stupid secret ending,
SpongeBob SquarePants,
which is just a bunch of cheap dance cycles. But even when you're done, you're still not really done, cause Rehydrated added an optional multiplayer enemy rush mode in the menu featuring Robot Squidward, which was cut content from the original game. I've been reluctant to bring this up cause the game would have honestly been better if this wasn't included at all. I was honestly shocked with how half-assed this mode was. It's literally just an hour worth of jumping from island to island of reused assets, killing what feels like an endless wave of robots. It was an absolute chore to finish this thing for footage. I can't overstate that enough. The stages gradually get harder by throwing a massive amount of projectiles and robots to the point the frame rate starts tanking. But the difficulty doesn't matter cause there is no real death penalty. You just die and respawn as if nothing happened. But you know, in hindsight, maybe that's a good thing so you're not forced to start this torture chamber over again. The cherry on top for me was the lack of sound effects and the music tracks randomly switching to tunes from the base game. There was no rhyme or reason or rhythm to any of this. Like, there isn't even a post-winning cutscene. It just shows you the score that doesn't matter, and Robot Squidward blows up.
No, worse! It'll go right to your thighs!
My thighs?
And then you blow up!
To truly articulate just how bad this was, I reached out to another longtime fan of the original game who heroically played this mode with me. We're on the scene with her now.
Hi, yes. Great game, except, I would like the hour I lost in the Asset Wasteland back. Thank you.
Wow, truly insightful commentary from the community. Like, yeah, it's cool that Purple Lamp managed to include some cut content from the original and letting you play as other characters. Gary with a frying pan is fantastic, but how it's included was a total bland dumpster fire. Personally, if they wanted to go above and beyond, they would have hidden Robot Squidward in the base game somewhere as a super boss that you can actually fight instead of flailing around in a layer of blue.jpg.
Actually, it's coral blue numbers.
That's enough dunking for now, though. But since I've been praising the general aesthetics of this game for like the whole video, let's focus on the presentation for a bit. So to reiterate, Rehydrated was developed by Purple Lamp Studios, who utilized the Unreal Engine and Nickelodeon's artistic insight to revitalize the game's iconic look, most notably in the colors department. Rehydrated is considerably more bright and colorful than the original, and it makes for some amazing eye candy. Like, I want to take a huge munch out of that right now. I mean, right now.
So delicious! I gotta have more.
You know, in hindsight, the original kinda looks like it smells. Color-wise, that is. It's much darker, dimmer, rougher, and flatter in comparison. Visually, it did look good at the time, there's no doubt about that, but now, Rehydrated looks good for its time. Essentially looking like what people remember from the original, but better. And tastier. The graphics glow-up is easily Rehydrated's greatest achievement. It's filled with more details in the characters, environments, destruction effects, and backgrounds. The longer draw distances make Bikini Bottom's layout feel much more large and coherent. Like, seriously, take a moment to look off into the distance, and you can see areas from other levels in extreme details now. The tiny things really do add up. Like, the amount of specks just chilling on screen actually make the game look like it's underwater. Debris and pollution included. Now, some designs are a little different, which is understandable when trying to capture the more modern look of the show, but nothing looks unrecognizable, minus Merman's tongue. But since the team was basically rebuilding the game from the ground up in Unreal, they did take the time to add in some animations, specifically the idling character ones. You like memes? Well, you better, because now they are realer than ever before. Get a load of these, and get ready for the wettest, fishiest dabs in the sea, y'all. But since the team put in the extra effort to create new animations, I wish the team went one step above and added in some more spatula collecting ones. There is literally one for each character, and I have seen these more times than I can count. It does indeed get old. Jak and Daxter, a 20-year-old game now, if you can believe it, famously had several types of collecting animations. And with Spongebob being an insane shape-shifting clown, the possibilities were endless, and it would have definitely been a universally welcomed addition since it's not messing with any core mechanics. Now, the variety in the death animations are still there. The captain hand pulling the characters away when you hit a no-no zone was and still is iconic, but for some bizarre reason, Rehydrated occasionally just hard cuts to a loading screen when you die, even when the hand starts to reach out. It just doesn't let it finish or show up at all sometimes. Tisk, tisk. It feels and looks a little ugly. I don't know what happened here. And I guess while I'm complaining about stuff, welcome to my micro segment of things that are different from the original that I'm petty about, featuring attitude. Okay, this one immediately stood out to me. The invisible boatmobile in Merman's Lair is just hanging out on this platform, and if you hit the button, it briefly makes it visible. In the original, though, once it stops being visible, the boat was clearly still there. Kind of how the invisible boatmobile worked in the show. You're just suspended over nothing. It was a cute little Easter egg, and it was the sole reason this button existed at all. But in Rehydrated, once it stops being visible, the model just disappears. So by show logic, this button just materializes some random car for 5 seconds. It's a massive detail oversight. This devastated me, and it's super disappointing. Catch this! My other petty grievance is the lack of a dramatic camera zoom in when Mrs. Puff says her iconic line.
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
This was post-history, y'all, and Rehydrated dropped the ball here big time by having it just be a static camera shot instead. It's bland, boring, and I'm disappointed. Patch this! Pretty please, thank you. But audio is just as important as video, and for the most part, give or take a few things, it's unchanged from the original. The sound effects and music continue to slap, and Rehydrated successfully HDified all of them.
Cha-ching!
The OST is simple and a little repetitive in some areas, but these tunes are classic and so incredibly fitting. Not to mention, some of them go mega hard, adds a lot of intensity and drama to an otherwise silly experience. The boss fights especially having the more hype and epic sounding moments. It's like riding a seahorse into battle. I should buy another sword or something. Now, Rehydrated didn't bother to add in any extra quips or voice lines, which is a real shame because I do not find the characters' jokes funny anymore from repetition alone.
SpongeBob butt pants.
That's not very funny.
However, Rehydrated included an insane amount of language options, which adds a whole new type of funny sonic flair. I really encourage y'all to mess around with these, regardless if you speak the language or not. It is so incredibly entertaining to hear the sheer variety in everyone's performance.
Stai andando bene, Spongebob, ma non fermarti proprio adesso.
Comment below with your favorite language option, cause Japanese is mine, for obvious reasons. Now when it comes to technical performance, I did have the pleasure to play this game several times on Switch and PC. Kinda what you expect. The Switch version struggles sometimes. Wonky draw distances with sudden pop-ins, ridger edges, shadows, textures, slower loading times, and frame rate stutters, etc. But for the most part, it works. That's just Switch performance in a nutshell, baby. Trading performance for mobility. 'Tis the price we pay. Of course, the PC version, as you can expect, runs like a dream. So smooth, so crisp, so much HD sponge for your eyes to consume. And console-wise, I have no idea, but I imagine it's fine. So when it comes to the presentation, in another timeline, the developers could have easily taken the lazy route of just porting the original with a better resolution, but they really went all out bringing a new life to the look, even if they didn't seize every opportunity. But seriously, Purple Lamp, where is his tongue? You know, I could honestly talk about this game for hours, diving into the nuance of every nook, cranny, and sponge hole, like how the monkey boxes that shrink when you get too close look smug thinking they fooled you, but you activate an exploding tiki so you get the last laugh. But I think I made my points. However, the community love for this game feels endless, so it's no wonder it got remastered after all of these years. Some of the appreciation definitely does stem from nostalgia for the show and the time period when the original was released. You know, back in the better days, but that doesn't discount the general simple fun this game can offer to both older and younger generations. It's always an interesting balancing act when trying to revitalize a beloved game. What do you keep? What do you change? Will changing aspects of the game anger longtime fans, or is keeping things the same just going to carry over the missteps of the original while throwing the opportunity away to possibly improve the experience? The remaster-remake discussion is always in flux and easily one of gaming's biggest discourse icebergs, but in SpongeBob's case, I can say I'm happy to play this over the original any day. You just can't compete with that color, baby. So who knows what the future of SpongeBob games has in store, but at least one of the better ones managed to stand the test of time, even if they lost a few tongues along the way. Yo, yiggity yo, welcome to the end of the video. So, hi y'all! Yeah, 2021 really ended up being 2020 part 2, so very sorry for the lack of content. The world has been on fire lately, but I'm still here, y'all. Still got plans to make more videos, even if it takes me a lifetime. But content wouldn't be possible at all without my amazing patron supporters. God, I appreciate y'all so much. Just mwah, mwah, mwah. And this episode's patron shout-out goes to Drake Nielsen, Skullman, and Frost Enwood. Thank you so much for your support, and don't forget, y'all are a bunch of goofy goobers. Yeah. Also, another big thank you to the Atomic Twins who created the SpongeBob love song. They make a lot of other fantastic comedy content, so I highly recommend checking them out. Links below. And for those who want to keep up to date on future videos and my general gaming endeavors, please consider following me on Twitter, Twitch, or subscribing to my side channel, SuperButterBuns, aka in the meantime content between my real videos. I've been trying to find a better work-life balance these last 2 years, but still got plenty of stuff planned for the future, so bless y'all for sticking around, and I hope to be back sooner rather than later. So, until then, toodles!